Alright Seth, thanks for having me here, Mel Gibson said as he sat down in the chair adjusting his jacket while Seth Meyers smiled politely and the audience clapped. Welcome Mel, it's been a while since you've been on the late night circuit, Seth replied leaning forward a bit, and Mel gave a small nod. Yeah, I've been busy, keeping out of trouble. Seth chuckled lightly. Well, some people might argue that keeping out of trouble hasn't exactly been your strong suit. Over the years the audience laughed, but Mel's smile twitched just slightly, and he took a breath. Careful Seth, he said in a tone that still carried a hint of humor, but something under it felt sharp. I'm just saying you've had some headlines, Seth continued in that careful host voice meant to sound playful but with an edge. Headlines? Mel repeated, tilting his head. You mean the times the press decided to make me the villain of the week? Seth shifted a little. Well, I mean, it wasn't exactly the press making those phone calls. Or, you really want to go there right now, Seth? Mel interrupted, his eyes narrowing. The audience made an awkward collective noise, a mix of surprise and curiosity. Seth gave a small laugh. We're just having a conversation, Mel. I'm not trying to stir anything up. Stir anything up? Mel leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. You invite me here to talk about a movie, and within 2 minutes you're tossing little digs. You think that's funny? Seth tried to steer it back. Well, the audience seems to think. Screw the audience, Mel cut in sharply, his voice suddenly louder. The room went quiet, and Seth blinked. That's bold, Mel. Look, Seth, I came here to promote my work, not to be a punchline for your late-night monologue. I've been in this business longer than you've been alive, so maybe show a little respect. Seth kept smiling, but his eyes looked tense. I respect you, Mel, but part of being here is being able to laugh at ourselves, That's what we do here, laugh at ourselves? Mel repeated. Then laugh at yourself, Seth. Let's talk about your career, and the fact half the people watching can't even remember a movie you've been in. The audience made a collective gasp, and Seth's smile faltered. That's not really. No, it's exactly what it is, Mel snapped. You sit there acting like some moral judge, but you've made your living poking at other people while hiding behind a desk. Seth adjusted his tie. Well, I think we might be getting a little off track here, Mel. You think so? Mel said, then leaned back in his chair looking straight at Seth with a cold smirk. You know what, Seth? F*******. The room exploded in gasps and nervous laughter, some people not sure if it was scripted. Seth froze for a moment, processing the words before managing to speak. That's one way to handle a question, Mel. You bet it is, Mel replied flatly, and for a few seconds the air in the studio felt heavy. Then Seth tried to recover. Well, folks, we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back maybe Mel and I will find some common ground. The band started playing, but the camera caught Mel still glaring at Seth before cutting to commercial, leaving the audience buzzing about what they just witnessed. ChatGPT. The band's music faded as the cameras came back on. The applause cue light flashed, and Seth Meyers put on his best host smile, though it was clear to anyone watching that the tension from before the break hadn't disappeared, not by a long shot. And Mel Gibson sat back in his chair with his arms crossed, watching Seth like a hawk, the studio audience clapping a little too loudly as if trying to mask the awkwardness in the air. Welcome back, folks, Seth began, his voice overly bright. I'm still here with Mel Gibson, star of the new film. Are you gonna actually talk about the film or just keep taking cheap shots? Mel cut in immediately, and the laughter from the crowd came out awkward and scattered, Seth's jaw tightening just slightly before he forced another smile. We'll get there, Mel. I just think it's important to be able to laugh about things. Laugh about what? About years of work being overshadowed by mistakes I've already talked about and apologized for. Mel said, leaning forward now. Or maybe you just think it's good TV to poke the bear and see what happens. Seth kept his composure, though his voice dropped into that slower, careful tone he used when an interview started going sideways. Mel, you've been in this business for decades. You know how these shows work. We mix a little humor with the serious stuff. Humor is one thing, Mel interrupted again. Disrespect is another, and I don't know if you noticed, but there's a difference between making a joke and grinding an axe. The audience gave a low murmur, some clearly enjoying the back and forth while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, and Seth leaned on his desk slightly. Mel, I'm not grinding an axe, I'm doing my job, which includes keeping the tone light, especially for our viewers at home. Your viewers at home just watched you take a swing at me the second I sat down, Mel replied, his voice calm now but with that unmistakable edge. And I'm not gonna sit here and smile like it's all part of the act. Seth sighed quietly. Alright, let's talk about the movie then. It's called Blood Horizon, you directed and starred in it. Finally, Mel muttered, leaning back, but Seth ignored the comment and pushed forward. It's about a team of soldiers on a rescue mission in the South Pacific, inspired by some true events. Yeah, Mel said. It's a story I've wanted to tell for a long time, about loyalty, sacrifice, and the fact that real heroism doesn't always look like Hollywood heroism. And as he spoke, the energy in the room shifted slightly, the audience leaning in, but Seth, perhaps still stung from earlier, interjected. So in the movie, your character struggles with his own flaws while leading the team, kind of like life imitating art? The moment hung there, Seth's words walking the line between a genuine question and another jab, and Mel's eyes narrowed again. You just can't help yourself, can you? I'm asking a real question, Seth replied, though his tone wasn't as neutral as he probably hoped. I mean, a lot of actors draw from their personal experiences. There's a difference between drawing from experience and being defined by your worst moment, Mel shot back, and you seem pretty eager to define me by mine. The crowd reacted with a few nervous laughs and someone actually clapped, which only made the tension more bizarre, Seth keeping his smile but tapping his pen on the desk in a subtle sign of irritation. Mel, I think you're taking this a little more personally than what? Than I should? Than you'd like? Maybe you're used to people sitting here and letting you chip away at them with snarky little lines. But that's not me, Mel said, and the way his voice cut through the studio made even the band members glance at each other. You want ratings? Great. But I'm not your punching bag. Seth opened his mouth to reply, but a producer's voice came faintly from off stage, probably urging him to steer things back to neutral territory. All right, let's take a step back. You can take all the steps back you want, Seth, Mel said. I'm right here, and I'm telling you straight, you crossed the line. The audience was dead silent now except for one person who laughed too loudly before realizing no one else was, and Seth tried to regain control. Okay, Mel, so in Blood Horizon you... Don't pivot like nothing happened, Mel interrupted again. If you're gonna bring this up, own it. Own what? Seth said, his smile slipping now. That I made a joke? That's my job, Mel. And it's my job to call it when it's cheap, Mel replied. You think the people at home didn't see it? You think they're all just nodding along? No, they know when someone's getting baited. Seth shook his head slightly. This isn't bait, it's conversation. Conversation. Mel raised an eyebrow. Conversation is two people talking with respect, not one person setting up the other for a punchline. There was a pause, heavy and uncomfortable, and then Mel leaned back again. But hey, maybe that's just me, maybe I'm old-fashioned. Seth gave a short, humorless laugh. You might be, Mel, and for a moment the two men just stared at each other, the cameras catching every bit of the awkward energy between them, before Seth finally turned to the camera and said, We'll be right back after this, folks, and the band kicked in again, but even as the applause swelled, the audience could see Mel still staring at Seth, and Seth avoiding looking at him. Both men clearly not ready to let it go, and everyone in the room could feel that this wasn't over yet, that when they came back from the next break, the tension might finally boil over. When the cameras came back for the final segment of the night, the studio lights felt a little warmer than usual, and the applause, though enthusiastic, carried that slight undercurrent of people wondering if they were about to witness a reconciliation or a complete meltdown. Seth Meyers smiled at the audience, then turned toward the camera. Welcome back, folks. We're still here with Mel Gibson, whose new movie Blood Horizon hits theaters this Friday. His tone was steady, careful, as if he was balancing on a wire, and Mel sat in his chair with a calm but unreadable expression, hands clasped loosely in front of him. So Mel, Seth began, earlier in the show, things got, let's say, a little intense. The audience chuckled lightly. And I just want to say you've been doing this long enough to know sometimes in live television the wires cross. Mel gave a short nod. Sure, wires cross, tempers flare. People say what's on their mind. That's what happens when it's not all scripted. Seth smiled faintly at that. Well, I'd rather have honesty than some safe plastic interview. Mel tilted his head. Honesty's fine, Seth, as long as it's not disguised as a joke at someone's expense. Seth's smile thinned, but then he nodded. Fair point, and after a brief pause he continued, I might have pushed too hard early on, and if that felt like I was taking shots, I'll own that. It wasn't my aim to derail the conversation. The crowd gave a soft round of applause, and Mel's shoulders relaxed slightly. All right, I can accept that, he said, and I can admit I came in ready to defend myself a little too quickly. Seth raised an eyebrow. So we're both guilty? Mel smirked. Guess so. The tension eased just enough for the audience to laugh. All right, Seth said. Then let's give people what they actually tuned in for, the movie. Mel leaned forward, finally engaging without the earlier defensiveness. Blood Horizon is about loyalty, sacrifice, and the idea that real heroism doesn't come with applause or medals. It comes with hard choices nobody wants to make. Seth nodded. And you directed and starred in it, which is something you haven't done in a while, right? Mel replied. I wanted to tell this story my way, and it's gritty, it's uncomfortable at times, but it's honest, and I think audiences are ready for that. Genuine applause broke out, and Seth smiled. See, this is what I wanted to get to earlier, Mel chuckled. Yeah, well, you could have skipped the warm-up jabs, Seth laughed. Lesson learned. Then with a sly grin he said, you know, I thought the wildest thing that would happen on the show tonight was our earlier guest canceling last minute because of a tabloid scandal. Mel raised an eyebrow. Sounds like you didn't need them after all. Apparently not, Seth replied, the audience laughing with them now, though I think people at home are going to remember this interview for a while. Good, Mel said with a grin. At least they got their money's worth. Seth tapped his pen on the desk. Well, if nothing else, we proved late nights still unpredictable. Mel nodded. And that's how it should be. The band began to play the outro music. Seth turned to the camera. Mel Gibson, everybody, Blood Horizon this Friday. The audience erupted into applause, but instead of the usual quick wave and cut to commercial, Mel stood, extended his hand to Seth, and the handshake they shared wasn't just for show, it was firm, deliberate, the kind that said we're good. The crowd reacting with a cheer that felt like a genuine release of the tension from earlier, and as the cameras faded to black, people in the audience knew they had just watched one of the most awkward, fiery yet oddly satisfying interviews in recent memory, all packed into a single chaotic, unforgettable episode.